Well, class, if you've been keeping track, you know that this is a third presentation on Hawaiian music. This is titled Folk Traditions Meet Electronic Media, Hawaiian Music Since 1900. And what I mean to focus you on here with that title is the fact that, of course, there had been music and dance in the Hawaiian Islands for centuries. We had Western contact for roughly a century or a little bit more by 1900. But now it's the era where electronic media like radio, like recordings are being developed. And so this has a great impact on Hawaiian music as it does all across the world. So around this time, late 1800s, Hawaii is beginning to introduce itself to the larger world. You have journeys by some of the monarchs to visit places like Europe, Japan, the U.S. mainland. When they went to visit these countries and the leaders of those countries, they took musicians and dancers with them to portray the Hawaiian culture to these other people. And as you know by now, we've talked about this concept of exotic or exoticism, meaning that something that is new and strange to someone else, they would consider to be exotic. So this Hawaiian music and dance seemed exotic to the non-Hawaiians who would witness it. Now we want to focus in on the last Hawaiian monarch, Queen Liliuokalani. I describe her as a songwriter extraordinaire. She was the last reigning monarch of Hawaii, and the government was overthrown in 1893. So Hawaii was then annexed by the U.S. in 1898. Now that's a very dark period in Hawaiian history, a very painful period. And in a class like this, in music class, it's not my intention to get into all the socio-political ramifications of that. I would welcome you to do a little research on that so you have a sense of what happened during that last decade of the 19th century. But it does set up this ongoing relationship with the United States and its culture so that some things begin to happen in terms of Hawaii interacting with the West in a way that it was accelerated and intensified. Queen Liliu composed 165 songs by the experts' reckoning, and many of them were written after the overthrow, when she was under house arrest for all purposes. She combined Western melodies and harmonies with Hawaiian poetic sensibilities. She learned to play piano. She composed her songs at the piano, but of course, with her Hawaiian heart and her Hawaiian literary sensibilities, those songs kept the essence of Hawaiian poetry, with kauna, hidden meanings, and other types of Hawaiian devices. Now, most of her songs were compiled, and only in 1999, only about a decade ago, was it published in one source. I mentioned in a previous line that she had composed 165 songs, and this particular songbook includes 150 of them. There was a songbook committee formed in 1973 to compile those songs and to notate them in modern Western notation. For many of us, her most famous song is Aloha Oi, the traditional farewell song of Hawaii. And we're going to take a look at one rendition of that.
Ha'aheo e ka ua I nā pahi ke nihi ai lai ka nahe Aloha aloha e ke o no na noho hikali po one fond embrace aho I a e au until we meet again. Aloha aloha e ke o no na noho hikali po one fond embrace aho I a e au until we meet again. Until we meet
I love Amy Hanaiali'i's voice, and this is kind of a contemporary arrangement, very beautiful, and you can hear the sweep of that melody. It's just a beautiful, touching melody. Interestingly enough, when President Obama was inaugurated, he being in some senses a child of Hawaii, because he grew up here, went to high school here, graduated from Punahou School. He decided to invite the Punahou band to come and participate in the inauguration parade. So here's a clip of them performing the instrumental version of Aloha Oi as a representative Hawaiian song to those outside Hawaii as they march in the inauguration parade. Take a look.
Punahou High School Marching Band from Honolulu, Hawaii. It's making its first appearance here in the inaugural parade. This marching band represents Barack Obama's former high school in Honolulu. Wow, this marching band has come a long, long way, and it's going to be it's performing right now for the new president of the United States, a graduate of that high school, Gloria. Wow.
If you were watching before, Wolf, it was clear he's enjoying.
It's sort of a nice thing that both his high school is represented and also Michelle Obama's high school represented as well.
This high school gave him one of the big starts in life. They were the first-rate educational institution, and he wasn't a very good student, but he went there, he got a lot more serious.
They traveled almost 6,000 miles to get here to participate in this historic inaugural parade. There's 142 participants. They raised, obviously private money to do so. Founded in 1841, this high school is the largest independent kindergarten through 12th grade school in the nation. Wow, I didn't know that. Did you know that, David?
Yeah, his mom, he was living in Indonesia, and his mom sent him back to live with his grandparents in Hawaii, partly so he could go to this school. And she wanted him to get a good American, get a good education, and she obviously loves it.
He's getting into it.
Yeah, totally.
Now, after Hawaii was annexed by the United States in 1898, it facilitated a whole another level of interaction, travel in between Hawaii and the U.S. mainland, opportunities for musicians, those who were not royalty, to be able to tap into the cultural interchange. So we had such things, and these are just examples. One example was something called the Pan-Pacific Exhibition in 1915 in San Francisco. And if you're familiar with the concept of World's Fairs or World Expos through the 20th century, I can't think of any of them happening right now in the more recent past. But there were all kinds of world fairs and expositions and things like that. So there was one that was well known in San Francisco where different Asian cultures and Pacific Island cultures came and interacted with the Euro-American cultures. The ukulele was introduced to the U.S. audiences about that time through this exhibition and through some other travel by Hawaiian musicians. And that in turn led to a U.S. ukulele craze in the 1920s, part of the Roaring Twenties music. So if you've ever seen the movies that show you the flappers dancing the Charleston and crooners singing through a megaphone and wearing raccoon coats and all that kind of what seems to us to be very cheesy at this point, what they call the Roaring Twenties era. Ukulele was a big part of that. And also during that early 20th century, there were cross-country tours by the Royal Hawaiian Band and other musicians all through the first half of the 20th century. So people getting exposed to Hawaiian music, Hawaiian musicians, Hawaiian instruments. And for instance, the steel guitar was introduced into country music by Frank Ferreira and Sol Ho'opi'i, two Hawaiian musicians who moved to the mainland permanently in the 1920s, and wonderful musicians, and so they sought to be part of the recording industry in the U.S., involved with recording sessions for different popular music. So they brought the steel guitar, the Hawaiian version, where the steel bar was used to slide around on the strings to create that glissando kind of sliding sound that we hear in Hawaiian music. And then country musicians took that, adapted the instrument a little bit, put a pedal on it so it would sustain and electronically amplified it. And now in country music it's called the pedal steel guitar. And in Hawaii, as we learned, it was called the kikakila, or the steel guitar. Now, another thing that began happening there in the early 20th century was as U.S. recording companies began to expand and to create a market for their music. RCA Victor is one early company. There were several others, but I think that RCA is still a familiar label to us in the 21st century. They began recording Hawaiian music in 1906 because they were looking again for novelty, exotic music, not just American popular music, Dixieland and jazz and things like that, but also seeking other kinds of music, non-Western music. And so they began recording Hawaiian music because, again, easy access as a U.S. territory. Many other recordings followed after that first recording. The Hawaiian music then became popular on radio shows and in movies. There was a mainland national radio show called Hawaii Calls that began in 1935. And as I remember, it was a weekly program that featured the music and musicians of Hawaii, and it was very popular in the U.S. mainland. Another kind of benchmark for Hawaiian culture coming into the U.S. entertainment industry was a movie called Waikiki Wedding in 1937, starring Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby, you'll see his familiar face on this photo. You probably recognize his face from the standard favorite at Christmas time called White Christmas. And he's done many other movies and recordings, of course. But that was Hawaiian culture, a Hollywood version, of course. And so it was quite cheesy by today's standards, but it was a big thing back then. Then we have the interaction of Hawaiian music with what is known in the entertainment industry and the music industry as Tin Pan Alley. Now that needs to be explained a little bit here so you know what that term is. Tin Pan Alley was a nickname for an area in Manhattan in New York City, west of 28th Street. And in the early 1900s, music publishers established sheet music sales rooms on 28th Street there. And what you need to understand is that at that time, music publishers were making as much money from selling the sheet music for people to go home and play on their pianos as they were selling those early recordings. As you can imagine, those big wax cylinders, those big discs, it was not a cheap technology. It was fairly expensive, and you had to be fairly well off to record them, to afford them at first. And so a lot of people had pianos in their home because they wanted to have that as part of their family culture. And so they would, these publishers would sell the sheet music and make their profit that way. Now, pianists who worked for those publishers were known as song pluggers. And they played the latest hits by George Gershwin, Irving Berlin, Cole Porter, and other early Tin Pan Alley songwriters or popular songwriters. And here in this photo, as a matter of fact, we have a picture of the young George Gershwin at his day job, if you want to call it that, working for the publishers and playing music in an era where it wasn't easy for people to get recordings of that music. And the sheet music sales, as it says here, they're more popular or more profitable for a while than record sales. Now, there was a newspaper reporter that heard the sound of many pianos playing during a hot summer day when all the windows were open. And he compared the sound of all those different pianos playing different songs as he walked down that street to the sound of someone dropping tin pans on the sidewalk. And in his newspaper article, he referred to this area of 28th Street as Tin Pan Alley. And it kind of stuck, and it became a nickname for all that type of music. Music like Someone to Watch Over Me, music like The Way You Look Tonight. A lot of the romantic movies of the last quarter century have used that music from older times to represent that romantic era.